Not so easy to survive. Still war here.
Survive a war. You gotta become war.
That why they pick you? Because you like to fight?
I'm expendable.
Expendable. What mean expendable?
It's like if someone invites you to a party and you don't show up, it doesn't really matter.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, look who has joined the chat. Here's our friend, Rambo Van Halen.
Yes, the one and only Rambo Van Halen here with the thickest of cocks.
Indeed, only the thickest. All right, man, first and foremost, tell me about the name. The first time I saw you on the timeline, I'm like, that's a follow from me just for the name alone. How'd you choose your X Twitter handle?
Oh, so there is years ago, I was in Serbia and I was at some, I think this like arts festival conference, and I was
as one does, of course, in Serbia.
As one does. That's a whole other story to itself. But there was a guy, I guess he's kind of famous in the Balkans. His name is Rambo Amadeus. He's a musician.
Okay.
And I don't remember anything about this guy. I couldn't remember his face. I couldn't remember his music. I was briefly introduced to him, and everyone said, "Whoa, that was Rambo Amadeus." And the name kind of stuck. And throughout the years, like when I was producing, I would do these non-union projects, and you have to use pseudonyms for certain people on production paperwork, so the union doesn't come in and bust them for doing non-union jobs. So I would just kind of use the name Rambo Amadeus for people as this pseudonym.
Yeah.
And then I had this he was director of photography from the Netherlands. And I thought it'd be funny to call him Rambo Van Halen, and that's kind of where that name came from. So there you go.
Yeah, man, it's classic. So we get the Rambo, we get the Van Halen, and then we get the Unabomber. So like, the balance is perfect. The balance is perfect. You mentioned one of your pieces that you've had a lot of accounts. There actually, some of the passwords are still stored in your kind of autofill, I think you mentioned. But one of the things that's interesting to me is you said that in the past you used Twitter, it was then, as kind of just a news feed, not really engaging a lot. But something happened now with the most recent account. Describe for me kind of what happened. Well,
it's all Bap's fault. It's really Bap's fault. I mean, I think I commented on one of his posts and he followed me, and I'm like, fuck. Now, because normally before I would just kind of delete. I would get some followers. I would post in the replies and kind of snark at people, and sometimes I get some followers, and every few months I would just delete the account and start over again.
Why did you do that? What drove you to delete? I'm interested in that
I
impulse.
don't know. I think that's a really good question. I think part of it was the anonymity thing. Like I just wanted to maintain 100% anonymity.
They're getting too close.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. And too, I would kind of get bored with the people I followed and people following me, and I would
go down a rabbit hole, and it's an echo chamber of crazies and stuff.
Exactly. And so I would just start over, and it was very easy to do that. And then I got the BAP follow.
Hey, much can be blamed on BAP now, I know.
Yeah, so it's all his fault.
Yeah, of course.
And then I'm like, fuck, I can't delete this account. Yeah. And slowly I just started posting more and more. And then what happened with this account? Like I think I'm approaching like 5,000 followers now.
Yeah, I know, man. That was quick too, by the way.
It was quick. And what would happen is people would, I would see posts about film industry stuff, and it was wild speculation and just so fucking wrong. And I would have to jump in and correct them. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
You know, being the egotistical know-it-all.
Oh, I mean, if you got to set it right, though, you know,
Yeah.
you gotta, school's in session, you know, sit down, have the seat. Here's
And
how it
then some of
actually
these
is.
concepts were really complicated and I had to elaborate on them.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
started writing, you know, kind of threads about it.
Mm.
And, you know, and the way I write is, you know, I like to use personal anecdotes to kind of
Yes.
illustrate points. And that, you know, I started attracting a lot of followers.
Mm. I want to talk about your writing, but I want to go there kind of the long way. I want
Yeah.
to talk about, first of all, Twitter or X. I have a hard time calling it X. I just feel Twitter feels right. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Twitter just flows.
yeah.
Let's use Twitter.
And I don't know what it means. So if you, what is the equivalent of tweet on X? Is it skeet or something? What is the,
I would just say post, I guess, but that
yeah.
doesn't quite, you know, that doesn't quite cover it.
I feel like Elon has to get the marketing team together and then decide what the word is. Because once there's a word, once it's an actual thing, I think we'll be closer to adopting that as the full-time name. You know, otherwise we're just dead naming it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
my North American you know, mouth can't say exhaust. Like it's very uncomfortable to go
shit
gut,
hurts. I mean, it's
you
not
know?
good.
Yeah.
So, um,
Like that.
yeah, man, and we have to figure it out. We have to figure it out. But I want to talk about it as a medium. And in 1958, Canadian communication theorist Marshall McLuhan coined the phrase, the medium is the message. And he was fascinated, I think, with how different mediums shape the way we think and interact with the world, with each other.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so one of the things that I've noticed you doing, which I think is really interesting, is you're experimenting with the medium and in a way trying to hack the Twitter algo. So I feel like there's kind of a science behind the algorithm and you can figure out how to game it. I know that once you conducted a poll where you were like, do you guys prefer the long kind of article style? Do you prefer the more of the threads? You know, what has been your experience as you've made your way, I think quite successfully, you know, through the Twitter game? What are some of
Well,
the
you know, if I
things you've
wanted to
discovered?
hack the algorithm, I'd be doing it differently. You know, I don't really care that much about engagement. I think there's probably 50 people I actually want to engage with.
All right.
Um,
And Bap's one of them, so there's only 49 more after
yeah,
that.
not that he engages with me that often, but I do like reading them. But you know, people
Sure.
I actually, you know, talk to like you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
there aren't that many of them. So, but if I really wanted to kind of, you know, get engagement maxing, I would be doing threads
Okay.
because instead of, you know, you get, you know, I'm pro and I'm monetized, so I'm getting paid. I get like $30 a month from Twitter, which is nice.
Nice.
You
Nice.
know, it's whatever, but it's like lunch at McDonald's these days. That's how much that's
But
how
it's
much
cool though, you know,
it is. But
and
it's cool.
there's a threshold to being monetized, right? So
Yeah,
you have
no,
to
it's
actually
cool.
have certain
But if I wanted
engagement
to
already.
maximize that, I would break up these long posts into like 50 tweet threads
Okay.
because then you get 50 times the engagement.
Interesting.
And what I did, you know, and experimenting around, they have the articles feature. I find that nobody reads those.
Okay. Okay.
So I just do these like, you know, crazy 2,500, 3,000 word posts.
Yeah.
Uh, and I like doing that better rather than going into threads because I feel like I'm not constrained. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and there's something about the old Twitter that you had to kind of use economy of language
I
and give
like that actually.
I
I really
like
love
that
that
too.
limitation.
I like that too, but I found that I could only, you know, I couldn't really communicate what I wanted to communicate. So,
Yeah, and a certain number of characters, and I found that I've tried to do a thread as well, and you come to the end of the sort of available space previously under the
mhm.
previous regime, and then it's like, so I'm kind of, yeah, I'm boiling down sentences and you know, cutting off words, unnecessary words and stuff to get the word count down. Maybe it's making it more succinct, but there may also be something lost as well. So I understand that kind of the notion of being constrained in that medium.
Yeah, and the other part is too, like if I were to do a thread and every single post was to be over the character limit, then the person reading it has to click on every single
Yeah, yeah.
post, and that just I think that sucks for most people. So I hate doing that.
Yeah.
And I think people do too. So, I mean, I'm not really kind of paying attention to engagement of followers. I'm flattered when it happens, when I get a bunch of new
Sure.
followers.
Sure.
But that's not kind of why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it sort of as just a medium for expression, really.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
and
in general, as I review, scroll through your account and particularly in the days preceding and the opportunity to speak to you, and I want to speak smartly about your writing and what you posted. So I kind of do a deep dive. So as I kind of your account taken as a whole, I think it's very nicely curated, and you get a what would be it's almost like the old Playboy magazine in a way. You know how
right.
the old I feel like the time of the great magazines when we were coming up, and I want to talk about that as well, coming up through the 80s and 90s, but those great magazines, zines and everything else, but I don't even know if they have that anymore. It's sort of all online, but you get your hands on a really well done Playboy magazine, and yeah, you have the tasteful nudity and things like that. It's not pornography, but just tasteful nudity. But you get the kind of the expose, you get a thought piece. There's some comedy there. Your stories about like you're taking us on a kind of a secret tour of the back sets of Hollywood, and you're explaining some of the jargon like rigor and best boy, sort of demystifying the Hollywood lingo and stuff like that. There's a little kind of gossipy stuff. There's the Helmut Newton. You get the Hans Fuhrer. You get the short films by Jan. So I really like. Do you do that intentionally? Is it kind of a general concept of art that you want to produce there on your feed?
No, but now that you mention it, it's funny, because I do love Helmut Newton, and he did a lot of work for Playboy, and
Yes.
I did love those magazines, and I mean, even until the early 2000s, like GQ was great,
Sure. Sure.
I used to love GQ,
Yeah. It's Spin magazine. There was a lot of cool mags.
and I even really loved the New Yorker until
Sure.
the great woke sorting happened and it became
Mm.
unreadable.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've been doing that intentionally, but yeah, that stuff definitely had an influence on me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So taken as a whole is so nice, because other ones made kind of just hard politics, politics, politics. Others are more like philosophically bent. And if you scroll through, one person's feed, it sometimes could tend to be like a single flavor throughout, but it's nice to have a kind of a stopping place. You could spend a while scrolling through your content and come across different images that are very well kind of put together, and the old advertisements that we loved the growing up, and those kind of glory years of the Van Halen glory years. And so the account as a whole, I think, comes across very well and well done.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to sort of discuss here your origin story. The main thing that I want to talk about is your writing. And I feel that there is an origin story to most people who write. It's a completely insane activity, and to engage in it means you must be slightly insane. When do you remember starting to write in your life, or become interested in words generally?
God, I think it was probably junior high school.
All right.
And yeah, and I just loved it, and I would just crank out these stories, and I don't want to give too much away, but I grew up in a very religious, conservative part of the country,
Okay.
and I was kind of always on the outside of that religion and the outside of that conservatism. This was the 80s and the moral majority, and I was growing up with a single mom, and
Yeah.
we did not have a lot of money. It's a long story. My dad was kind of a wealthy, successful man, but they divorced, and he
Yeah.
wasn't great with the child support, and she was terrible with money, and
Yeah.
so I grew up on food stamps and government cheese, and unwashed, unkept, dirty clothes, all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my teachers hated me, and I fucking hated them.
Why do they
Um,
hate you? That's interesting. That's a twist. I
well,
thought we
I
were
was a
coming to some.
contrarian. I was always a contrarian, and they
Yeah.
would, present just things that were just so incredibly wrong,
Sure.
and I would challenge them like at every point. They just hated that.
Mm.
And anything I would write, I did it, you know I was intentionally trying to piss them off, I think.
Yeah. So
And
provocative stories that you were writing in
they're
class
they're
about
always provocative,
about
always
murdering
like
your
before.
classmates.
For
call the
example, like
therapist.
this would have been, I think it would have been like in sixth grade, right at the end of the 80s.
Okay.
You know,
Nice.
I just to piss off teachers just because they were conservative, I did a whole book report on the Communist Manifesto.
Hey, they'd love you these days. You know, they'd
They
support
love like
that.
these days they love me. Then it was horrifying. Of course, I didn't believe any of it,
Sure, of
but
course.
I just knew it was going to piss them off. So
That's
that's
all
what
you
I did.
need.
But I choose the Communist Manifesto.
Why not? Why not?
Why not?
I'm going to
Found
be
it in the
reading that
public
same.
library, and I just knew it was like, kind of forbidden text,
Yeah.
forbidden knowledge at that time and place, and I went for it.
We'll be doing the
Uh,
anarchist cookbook next year.
God, I wish I could have got my hands on that
A
shit.
book report of that. So growing up, you won't say where you grew up, but I know that you ended up working in Hollywood, and
Right,
so to me, it's such an interesting time. You know, we discussed a little bit earlier the kind of dividing lines of the generations and how the times that we grew up in really influenced us in ways that people really can't understand. You know, like having I didn't have a cell phone until I was already graduated from undergraduate school. I mean,
right.
like I was legitimately out of college before I ever had a cell phone. And I mean, only only drug dealers in our community had the pager, you know. So before that, so
Right.
I never rose to that level. But like I remember getting my first, AOL email account, and I was in college when that happened. And
Right.
so
I was too. I just started college when I got AOL, and I think I was like 19 or 20 when I got a Nokia brick cell phone.
yeah, I mean, of
I
course,
freaking love it in the Snake game. Love that thing.
I've been issued that same phone a few times since then. But like growing up in that time, going out, going to concerts, seeing things, the things that were around, getting in trouble, for example, for doing a book report on the Communist Manifesto, your teacher will blow you now for doing that, and
Oh, absolutely.
you
No,
don't
I
go
would.
to jail.
Well, and if I was doing it today, I would probably do my, do it on, Bronze Age pervert or something,
Of
because again,
course, art of the deal.
yeah, right. Art of the Deal. Perfect. Yeah, perfect book. And, I dress up as Trump for my presentation or something.
Mm.
That's what I would have done today, because I was just that kid. I was just a contrarian, and didn't fit in, and I let them know that, and they let me know it too. That I was just not, one of the team. There was also a weird separation of church and state issue. I went to public schools,
All right.
and in this religious community, there really was no line between church and school. It was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting. The teacher would make like church announcements in class, you know,
Sure. Sure. Sure.
and they would talk about. I learned this later. They would at church they would talk about school, and because I wasn't in church, so I didn't get to hear about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, you were one of the outsiders, of course, because they all
Right.
attended the same school and the same church, and they didn't see you at church, so you were a heretic, of course, at
Yeah,
school.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
I mean, maybe I adopted that, but yeah, I mean, that definitely left a mark on me, especially, people who are in this, God, this religious world, and you
yeah,
just see the contradictions in their lives, and you see the
mm,
hypocrisy.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
as an adult, I kind of look back on that. I was very bitter at the time. Now I look
sure,
back and realize they're just flawed people like the rest of us. That's what it
sure,
was. Just a
sure.
bunch of flawed people. And I've been able to accept that. But it took me a long time. It took me a very long time. Even through, I ended up dropping out of high school.
All right.
Uh,
Until what grade did you go?
10th grade. I went through 10th grade.
Through 10th grade,
Yep.
and I imagine there were drugs involved somewhere there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
weed, psychedelics.
yeah,
Uh, but I had a lot of friends who got into real drugs and
sure,
did not really make it out of their 20s. And we've got one buddy who was um Jewish guy actually, and just
yeah,
incredibly bright, like smarter than all of us. And he got really into heroin
sure,
as senior year in high school. And by 19, he was robbing banks. And I
yeah,
heard he just got out of prison a couple of years ago.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so, I somehow was blessed and was able to make it out. Like, I was able to put that behind me and move on. But I've got, two kids and a mortgage and a career and hobbies and friends and stuff like that. And he's just starting his life in his He's, in his late 40s.
Coming at it, yeah, like really, really late. It's
Yeah.
such an interesting time to grow up in because, you know, as I think the boomers had their rock stars, you know, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and all those people. But if you think about it, like fucking Keith Richards is actually still alive now playing, you know. There were
Yeah,
some
it's kind of amazing,
there were
actually.
some casualties there, but like they had their drug addicts, but their drug addicts were like kind of or functioning. I don't know, high functioning, but they were functioning drug addicts, and they lived in many, many, many years. Apparently, these people, our generation, particularly as I was kind of the end of high school, the grunge period came out. Our rock stars were entirely self-destructive. So there was a kind of a nihilism that they preached, and you can see almost all of them to the very last band. Their lead singers are all dead. They've all overdosed. They
Their
dedicated their
suicides, or whatever you want to call the Kurt Cobain thing.
yeah,
Uh,
Kurt Cobain, all of those
yeah.
guys, all the bands. You just barely even name them. There are many of them, but it was a very different time, and it was kind of the '90s. I think turned a little bit dark, a little bit nihilistic, and there were. I think now the kids coming through it, they're in a very dangerous point because, you know, someone at a party's got some coke or whatever, then which is pretty normal for.
Oh, you can't even. If somebody offers you a bump, you can't even do it because it might have.
Correct.
It's crazy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because, you know, and there's so many examples. We are being kind of it's a chemical war in a way that is being waged on America. But nowadays, yeah, you can't play around with any of that stuff. Get a little
Well, and
fentanyl in
it's
it,
a
you're
funny
done.
thing though, man. I don't know that the kids are doing that. I don't know the kids today. They don't know what they what how our struggle. But no, I mean they don't hang out at the mall, and they
Sure.
don't hang out in groups. They're online. They're playing video games. They don't drive cars. A lot of them don't have cars. I mean,
It's
I
weird.
was living. I had my own apartment at 17, and I had a
Correct.
job
Me
at the
too.
grocery store that let me pay for a car, the apartment, all my expenses, and I was paying. I eventually went to college, and I was paying for that too. And they can't do that today. It's very
No,
sad.
no, you can't. I remember that as well. I finished when I finished high school. I was living on my own, and
Yeah.
it was an entirely different thing. And you could do that. I don't know, like an after school job. I was a simple after school job. I'm able to, like, you know, basically pay my bills and stuff. So this is not, like you said, it's not even something you can do anymore. So
No,
it's a very
and who would rent an apartment to a 17-year-old today?
oh hell no, hell no.
Like in any city, in any metro area.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. Growing up through all of these things that you know, the struggles and things that you were dealing with, how did you get out to Hollywood? How old were you when you, because I imagine I was surprised to hear that you didn't grow up in Hollywood.
I sort of have to. My dad lived there,
I
and
see.
I would go visit all the time, like every weekend. I mean, technically, my parents had joint custody, but I
Sure.
was mostly with my mom in an inland landlocked state,
Sure.
and but I would go down to LA all the time. So I was around it. My dad was in the industry, um,
Ah, okay.
very much so, and he was kind of a big shot.
All right, cool.
He was kind of a mover and a shaker in that world. So it was, gosh, I'm trying to. I would like to tell more stories about him. I think a lot of them would get me doxxed, but let me say that he was World War II generation,
All right.
and he was much older, and it was kind of the twilight of that golden age of Hollywood, where yeah, God, he was friends with Groucho Marx, for example.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And
Like the
I don't remember
OGs, the
this, but
great ones.
apparently, like, I met Groucho Marx when I was a baby. Um,
Yeah, good.
before he died. And same with John Wayne. He was friends with John Wayne. I think
Sweet.
they shared the same mistress, actually, interestingly enough. He was living with her when he died. Um,
It's playing
so
playing dueling banjos inside her.
yeah, hey man, dude, it was 70s, man.
Hey, wild stuff going on there
Wild stuff happening.
for sure.
So I kind of sort of, grew up around it, but my dad died when I was 12, and we were kind of broke and penniless, and
All right.
I wrote a story that I actually deleted, kind of about the anti-nepotism, about how, anytime I'd ever run into anyone who knew my dad, it was a bad thing. It did not help me at all.
Why is that? Because
I think
he had a reputation.
he was a lawyer, and I think he was kind of a ball buster. And I think anyone who dealt with him in business, they got they felt like they got fucked
Yeah.
because he was working on behalf of his clients and doing a very good job for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Contract.
And
The contract is written to fuck you.
Yeah,
Not us.
well, right. And there was this one woman.
He did his job well.
Yeah, he did his job well. And there's this one woman, and not just his job, but like also kind of looking out for people, I think, because stars, celebrities and artists and actors, they're kind of naive in the world.
Interesting.
And a lot of what he did was looking out for them. Like there was a woman who was involved with his rock star in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he basically said, you need to dump this bitch. Like if you this bitch can like not come along on your journey.
This is not helping your career here.
And this rock star did just that. And 40 years later, I'm trying to produce a shoot on the Central Coast of California. This woman was somehow the film commissioner in this community.
Oh.
And the night before the shoot, she fucking pulled all the permits, canceled all the locations, canceled the cops, basically wrecked the shoot.
Shit.
And told me it was because of the shit that my dad did.
Because she found out who you were and who your father was.
Oh my God, you knew my dad. That's amazing. Because, I didn't really grow up with him and he died when I was young. I didn't really know this guy. So, anyone who knew him, I was interested, like, oh, tell me about my father. And
that's going to leave an impression on you too. He passed away when you were a child. So you obviously had some trauma at that moment dealing with it. And then later he's punishing you from the grave.
Like just, shit that,
Thanks,
probably
Pops.
one of the more successful ventures actually, but the blowback hit me 40 years later, like long after he was dead and gone. It was hilarious.
Is this the one where on July 22nd, growing up and those who didn't make it, you have a deleted post there?
I deleted that one too. I felt like that might have some doxable info. And I somebody pointed out the other one about my father and the rock stars.
Yeah.
Somebody else pointed out that there was some doxable info in there too. So I will rewrite that and repost it at some point.
Yeah.
But it's tough to tell these stories because if you knew who that rock band was, you'd be like, damn. And it would, a lot of it would make a lot more sense. But I can't mention them unfortunately and still be anonymous.
Well, it's nice. That shows a kind of professionalism about it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your writing style, and then I want to talk about some of your the pieces that you have up there. You mentioned there's a Truman Capote quote there. It's not writing, it's typing. So what do you mean by that? When you write, it's just typing or like transcribing, I suppose.
Kind of let it go, and that was I believe he was talking about Jack Kerouac's On the Road. He said that's not writing, it's typing.
Okay, yeah. When he's holding, and because that's Kerouac holding up the scroll of what he had written there.
Yeah, apparently he wrote it all. He just typed, just bang. I think he just took a bunch of speed.
Benzos, and he was on his way.
On one giant long scroll.
I heard the same. Just up for a couple of days and cranked it out, which, if we all sat down and we were disciplined, we'd do the same. And if we could get our hands on good benzos these days, might work out. Maybe Adderall.
Yeah, and I find with the writing, like it's best to not be disciplined, and it's best to just kind of just let it go and let it flow, and not really think about it too much. And a lot of these longer pieces I've been posting, they start as like short tweets.
Interesting.
I need to go through my profile here to remind myself. Gosh, like. For example, I wrote one about the patronage system in Hollywood, and it started as like a 2-sentence tweet, and I just kept going.
You're like save, and then it's growing in. All right,
I banged. I mean, I wrote that in like 30 minutes. I was gonna, and why I write. If you want to get to that question, it's really to sort my thoughts out.
Yes.
That's what I do. And there's something I was thinking about was, the whole Trump assassination.
Yes.
Biden stepping down. I mean, this is some crazy history we're living through right now.
Correct.
And it reminded me of things I'd done in the past to help out my inept bosses.
Interesting.
Yes. And I started just with that observation, and it just kept going. And I think it got to like 3,000 words.
Yeah, I'm going to read a couple of your sentences here, and I want to draw a kind of attention to your syntax, which I think is great. So just three extracts. This first one is from War Stories. I had a Marine buddy. He started working for me as my assistant, but we became friends. This was Iraq War, peak GWAT. Your sentences are like, all right, powerful, straightforward, short sentences, and almost kind of a staccato sense. So there was a director, I knew him. He was a real luminary of animation, one of the grand masters, respected by everyone. You've seen his movies. You've loved his movies. That was from Patronize Me. So I think it's a very interesting style. So it reminds me of like a military briefing style. So in a military briefing, they have an acronym BLUF, which is bottom line up front. So it's basically get to the fucking point
Right,
and,
right,
and
right.
get out of my fucking
Well,
face. Right. So you have a style of writing. It's a Hemingway in a way, but it's a BLUF style of writing. Right. So I imagine your writing style must have been influenced by your work in Hollywood and may have developed in an environment where you're talking to an important person. They're in a great hurry. So you got to get to the point and then hurry up and fuck off.
well,
So
that's yeah, that's a huge part of it. No, that's a huge part of it. You just need to communicate, very clearly and very shortly, and not flourish. And it's also, I mean, that's just kind of good business writing, really.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
and when you're shooting someone an email, like, yo, here's the bullet points. Like, we need to look at this, this, and this. Here are my questions. Here are the answers. Boom. Send me an answer.
Yeah,
Uh,
like we have enough to say here that I don't need to give you a long list of adjectives describing anything here. You get the point. You understand. You see what I'm saying? Like, let's just get to the point. And the writing style is very good. It's kind of fast paced and nice. I think that kind of staccato style turns out to be sort of creating tension, a sense of urgency, and a little bit of an emphasis on the narrative. It's interesting though, and that comes out of you just naturally, quickly as you write, and it's not contrived style or an intentional styling.
it is. I mean, I think I've been influenced by a number of things. I mean, one is hard-boiled detective fiction, which I just
Correct.
freaking
That's the way it sounds. It's really
uh,
nice.
really, really love that. And if I need an escape, I'll pick up a Raymond Chandler book,
Yeah,
and
good
that.
pulp.
And the other way is Thomas Ovi, not or is it Carl Ovi Nilsgaard?
Yes, my struggle. Yeah, like all
And
nine books of it or whatever.
it's beautiful writing. It is just such beautiful.
Yes.
I think I've gotten through half of it.
Yeah.
I need to pick it up again.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, just there in the first book, there's a story about him and his buddies trying to get beer on New Year's Eve. And
Mm,
just so beautiful and just
yeah.
so to the point and just so matter of fact. And I think he's just kind of writing without a filter. He's just kind of letting it go
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and not trying to, there's the language does not flourish. It's very to the point, which is,
Mm,
it's a Norwegian thing.
mm.
Um, but it works. And, that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff I like to read. So I think that probably influences how I write.
Mm. What other writers did you enjoy coming up or that may have influenced you? Any others? Those are two very good ones.
A great book. I love Stephen King, believe it or not. And
As
I
a
was like,
writer before,
as
we
a
don't love his
writer before he
politics
became
now, but anyway,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, fuck his politics now.
yeah.
But I have
I've
in
enjoyed a
mind,
good Stephen King book, obviously, for sure.
but his book on writing, which is partially on writing and it's partially an autobiography, is excellent. I think everybody should read that.
Yeah.
Just how he does it and what his process is in the business of writing, which is really interesting too, which I've never really been engaged in. I've never sold a story. Aside from, my Elon bucks, I've never gotten paid to write.
Hey, you're on Elon's payroll now. What would you like to do? Because it looks to me like your writings you could collect them, and it's almost like as one of your, I think some of your shorter posts, like a love letter to Hollywood. I could really see this kind of growing into something else. Have you thought about writing any kind of bringing it all together or having a single
I, I've
narrative go
I'm
through?
thinking about that. I'm thinking about doing just a collection of essays.
Mm,
Kind of disjointed. And I've got a lot of stuff I've written that I've never posted.
okay.
Um, I might try to put that out too. But yeah, I think if I probably have 40,000 words worth of stuff, and I'll
Hmm.
probably cull that down to half that to something like 100 pages printed. and and then we'll try to self-publish it. We'll see what happens.
and go from there. But I think what you're doing, it's this is kind of the new way, and we're finding our way around inside of this medium where what's the best way to do it? If you have a story, do I just break this up into a lot of threads? I get more engagement, but it's not
Right.
quite as nice to read it. Should I put it as a long format? Just putting things on, or people reading it? What's the feedback? Do I feel like I'm getting response from people? Like exploring this space and and the limitations. I think you've joined as well some of the spaces. What's been your experience there?
I think it's the best part of Twitter, honestly. Like
Really?
it's so freaking fascinating, like who you run into. I mean, and some of them are just guys goofing around, whatever.
Sure.
Uh, but some of the like, the day of the Trump assassination attempt, I get in this space and there are medical professionals, there are security guys, there are
Yeah.
guys who've been under private security, guys who have worked with Secret Service guys, and just having this like informed conversation. It's really interesting.
It just became hive mind. So like, bringing the best and the brightest of people who know the most about the particular topic and bringing them together. I
Yeah,
think,
it's amazing. It's just amazing.
yeah, there was one of the spaces that I joined, and I haven't done a lot with it. And I'll tune in every once in a while, but I often tune in anonymously. I feel I would hate like sometimes someone's doing one and there's only like 4 or 5 people in the chat or whatever in the space, and you feel like you jump in under your real name and you listen for a couple of minutes, but I'm driving down the road and then I get a call coming in, and I
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
drop out of the space and they're like, dude, Thiccoq was here for a minute and he bailed on me, fucking asshole. So I kind of just join in honestly, and listen along to some different things. But it's amazing that you can have Elon Musk and Alex Jones and Vivek Ramaswamy, and then there's one of the Tate brothers, or both of them are all online at the same time talking and having like a group chat, a group kind of a call, a phone call, and you can just kind of listen along, and if they like you, maybe even make a comment or something. So,
Yeah, or ask a question if you want someone to elaborate. It's really incredible. Do you follow Mishima's Head? Do you know that account?
um, I
He's a
may.
good follow. I highly recommend him. But yeah, he did a space a few weeks ago, and he was just talking about his experience in Afghanistan, and it was fucking incredible, and had me crying by the end. And I think there were 4 people in the space.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah, but it was just amazing, and maybe I don't want to spoil what he has to say, but maybe he's a guy you want to talk to in the future because he's very interesting. But yeah, he did a couple tours in Afghanistan and then some
Yeah,
stuff afterwards.
yeah. I'll make a note of it. Mishima's Head. Yeah, that's good, man. I always like to connect with that. I notice that there seems to be a strong correlation. A lot of the guys that I've interviewed have been, yeah, spent a little time downrange in the GWAT, and that'll definitely put a little bit of a pinch on your brain. And I think
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that like so getting to some of your writing, that's one thing that you actually one of your first long pieces, which you uploaded on June 20th, which we'll call War Stories. And so you're sort of, it's kind of like the connection, the nexus of Hollywood as war, but as an analogy for a little bit something else, and in this particular piece, you talk about writing and having some sort of meaning, or living experiences like being at war and being unable to extract any meaning. Like, what this meant nothing. What did
And,
this
and
mean?
not being able to communicate it to people who don't have similar experiences, and that's what
Yes,
it is. Because I found that, in many ways, Hollywood is very much like any other business, but it's
sure.
very different in many ways. And I think in the level of stress and just kind of day-to-day abuse that you can come across, and the stakes that you
Yeah,
need that the stakes, I don't want to say they're high because it's not life and death, right? This isn't like going into war. But people treat it like it's life and death. They treat it like it's even more than life and death. I think that fame aspect attracts a certain kind of person, who just is not a good person. Anyone who's motivated by the fame, I'm very suspicious of.
yeah. You've seen a few of those, I'm sure.
So many of those, many
Yeah,
of those. The people who are there because they like the work and it's good money, that's me. That's why I'm there.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
And I respect those people, but yeah, anybody who's there because they need to be famous, boy, watch out, man.
Mm, mm.
Because they're not, and they never will be, but they think that they can, if they get close to famous people, that will somehow rub off on them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it was in, oh, I forget the movie. It was a great line that, people think it's like fame is like catching a cold. Like if you just, it's contagious. If you just get close enough to somebody,
Right.
it doesn't work like that. And the
No.
other thing is just how empty it is on the inside. Because once you're on the inside, there's no glamour. There is no glamour like when you're on the inside looking out.
Yeah. Well, many of
Uh,
your own stories, where you touch on addiction, you touch on like infidelity, addiction, and all the other the traps and the pitfalls of life inside that system. And it is intense, and it is like war because there's a lot of money riding on it. All right, there's tons of money. If you fuck up, then we lost a day or something.
yeah, and then you're
You're,
done. I mean,
you're done, man. It's over. You're dead, basically.
yeah, and you're out, and you got to go do something else.
Yeah, yeah. So these are great because I like the way that your some of your stories will kind of move between themes, right? So it's a piece of writing. Is it about war? Is it about Hollywood? It's a little bit about both. It's about writing. It's kind of self-reflective. So giving a little bit of morals, and then of course there's a very touching. You tell the story of your grandfather and dealing with senility and things of that nature. You're not afraid to kind of open up and expose sort of yourself. You've discussed having diabetes and things. I think you self-referenced at one point being a middle-aged diabetic. That's a hard thing to cop to
Yeah,
publicly.
it's tough when you're in a world of fitness nuts online, and I do try to work out the best I can, but it's like my biggest fitness challenge right now is doing cardio without passing out and having a seizure.
Yeah, well, that's
So
hey, baby steps, my friend.
baby
Baby
steps,
steps.
right? That's a new thing for me, so I'm kind of trying to navigate that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I can't just sit on the couch all day either.
yeah.
That doesn't work either.
What do you feel about that? Exposing yourself, exposing yourself, but exposing yourself. Yes. When I think of you now, I'm thinking the Unabomber's face. So you're hiding behind Rambo Van Halen, but somewhere behind
Right.
there, there's a human being, and that you've had you're opening up to people who are utter strangers. I mean, we could all be lunatics and depraved animals out here. What do you feel about every once in a while I'll write something where I discuss myself a little bit, I'll put it out there, but I feel like I have kind of raw nerves and I feel like, fuck, dude, like I wrote that, it was very, yeah, I'm a little shy about it, and then maybe I'll just delete that shit, like because I
Well,
didn't.
it's good therapy, man. I mean, I think it's the fun. Here's the weirdest thing about being anonymous on Twitter is I can be more authentic by being anonymous than I could under my own name.
Interesting, interesting. What would
Uh,
happen if you were doxxed or whatever? Would there be?
I
How bad
Gosh,
would
I
it be?
think
How bad
it
would it
wouldn't
be?
be catastrophic. I think I could still earn a living doing what I do now.
Yeah.
There would be some uncomfortable conversations with the more liberal family members, though. Uh, so I think it would just be more uncomfortable than anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
I don't think it would break me though. Um, but again, okay, back in the day when I was in college, there was this guy who would come around to the bars and he would dress as Batman,
oh wow.
like a
Wow.
full-on Batman outfit. And
Was
he
he
would,
mocked or was this like respected behavior?
yeah, I mean, he was obviously nuts, but I think he was just probably like a painfully shy individual.
Wow, wow.
And probably a little autistic.
Yeah.
And the only way he could get out was to dress up as Batman.
Wow, there's so much that if you think about, the more you think about it, the more onion, levels to the onion there are to peel away from that. That's wild. That's
You'd see him
crazy.
everywhere. And everybody referred to him as Batman. And he'd be like,
Hey,
hey,
Batman.
and
Did he
you have
drink beer?
Batman. And
Wh-
full on mask, had no idea what his face looked like. And I
Yeah.
think he was probably an attractive guy. He was very fit. He was
Yeah.
tall.
Okay. Did he drink
But
beer and shit through the mask?
yeah, because his mouth was not covered, so
Yeah.
he could drink through it.
Did he have a manly chin?
I believe so.
That's so
I think. I mean, he looked like a Batman. Like he looked
okay.
like
Right. Right.
the
I mean,
Batman
because
movie.
Like, listen, Batman is the wrong costume if you have like a weak chin or something, man. Like
Yeah.
Batman, don't go for the Batman one. You know, that's
But
how they choose those guys.
but the first time it's jarring when you see a guy dressed as Batman,
Fuck
like
yeah, even the 10th time, it's still jarring.
are, and then like you get used to him and everybody knows him, and he just kind of went through his life as Batman.
Weird.
Isn't that
Weird.
weird? I mean, of course, and this is, I guess the internet was a thing then, but
Yeah.
Twitter wasn't a thing really, and there weren't. And I mean, who knows what he did online, and who knows what his sexual proclivities were, but um,
Maybe he was slaying it. That might have been the way. Man, he might have known something we none of us knew.
it must have been like all those girls wanted to hook up with
The
Batman.
Batman. What's under the
Um,
mask, my friend?
but by putting on that mask, I think he was able to maybe be his authentic self.
Sure, sure.
Isn't that
And
weird?
or even to get out of the house. He wouldn't have been able to get out of the house without it. But in this particular case, you can use it. I think so based on what you've written, writing is a kind of therapy in a way. And
Absolutely. No,
it's
it
useful and therapeutic to get. And you have so many really great stories. The stories themselves are very entertaining. And then you also you lay over top of the story a kind of a good moral of the story, I think. So one of the other
yeah, I
ones,
try. I mean, I think one comes out. I try to stay away from that. I try to not to think about the morality of it all.
yeah,
But again, it's a weird thing because to me, like this stuff is all kind of mundane because it was just sort of another day of on the job, and
yeah,
there's some Oscar-winning actress being fucked in the ass, by an Oscar-winning celebrity in a trailer because that's just how it was for so
yeah,
many years. But other people find that really interesting. And I look back at all this stuff as I write it down. I'm like, oh, you know what? I actually did do some interesting stuff.
yes, yes.
And and that's sort of a new revelation to me. Like, okay, maybe I have had kind of an interesting life so far,
Hmm.
and maybe I have accomplished a lot.
It is important. There's a moment where you stop and you take stock and you're like, what have the years have run by, and what have I done, and where am I? There's a moment then, and I think that for example, I know that Bukowski wrote a lot throughout his life, but he really experienced the peak of his celebrity and his fame and his success after the age of 50. And so there's a kind of a sense of sentimentality where you feel touched by time in a way, and you have a perspective on the events that have occurred, and you're able to kind of pull out the thread of what was maybe important there, you know.
No, and I think and there's a lot of value to that. And then how I get to that is through writing about it.
Yeah. One of the ones that I liked a lot here is Patronize Me, which you uploaded July 27th. And it seems like, you're reading about one thing, sort of the hierarchy, respecting the established hierarchy and importance of loyalty, and that even an artistic genius who doesn't bend the knee to the system can also be replaced. He can be put out as well. And so as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this is very insightful. It's very good. But then towards the end, the story takes a very interesting twist. And we're suddenly talking about Biden.
Right.
And at the end, it comes to the point where, like, I can see in a way the kernel, an idea of the entire piece was you sitting at home watching Biden give his speech, noticing, and very few people I'm sure noticed that he was not wearing his wedding ring. And you
There's
thought,
a few other things I noticed. One, I noticed, and somebody actually else, I posted a picture of just how fucked up he looked. And
sure,
someone else
insane.
posted, made the comment that his side of his face is swollen. And I
Mm,
looked, I'm like, oh my God, it is.
yeah.
And I'm guessing either he got beaten up or he took a really good fall.
Okay.
And I think that's probably what was the catalyst for him resigning. But
Yeah. So you
um,
believe there may have been some physical violence going on there?
I don't know, it was physical violence. I think he probably, old people trip, right? Old people fall.
Sure. You can help
Uh,
them trip too if you push them.
I remember my father-in-law had Parkinson's, and he would just be standing, and then you turn your back, and he would just whump and be on the ground,
Hmm.
just go right over. I wonder if something like that happened, if he hit his head on something, because it looked like he had a lot of makeup on, probably to
Okay.
cover bruising.
Was sort of really caked on, hiding a bruise or bump or something like that. So there
And
were a
I
lot of
wrote
things going on with him that you noticed.
And I wrote about the wedding ring thing. And someone else also pointed out that he has a habit of not wearing his wedding ring. So
Hmm.
I take that for what it is. The thing I really noticed about that speech and what got me thinking was the fact that he wasn't looking in the camera.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like rule one of doing a public address like that.
Sure.
It's the thing called a teleprompter. And what it is, it mounts in front of the lens and it's sort of a one-way mirror.
Okay.
So the camera can shoot through the teleprompter, but when you're looking at the teleprompter, you see the speech, the words of the speech, right?
Yes.
That way
Yes.
you're reading the speech and you're also looking directly at the audience.
Yeah.
So he was
Perfect.
looking off to the side, and I
Hmm.
think somebody was standing next to him, basically mouthing the words and directing his hand motions, and he was trying to pantomime them.
It was like the worst puppeteer job you'd ever could possibly hope to see.
It was that. And, and I know this because I've experienced times when we've had to, especially in the advertising work I do, where we have to, or even on the side, I've done some corporate videos and stuff like that where you
Yeah.
interview CEOs. Most people can do it. Most people can read from a teleprompter, and with a little practice and a little bit of training, you can be pretty good at it. But some people just can't fucking do it, and you still have to film them, and
Yeah.
that's what it breaks down to. And I mean, it's amazing. There's a lot of famous athletes, mostly who really can't read. They're just crazy dyslexic.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and and they get by, and they become very big and famous, but they can't read.
Sure. They
Uh,
got pushed through in school because they were an incredible athlete.
right. So like we have to make cue cards. You get a big piece of poster board and a marker, and you
Yeah.
write out stuff that's in phonetics,
Yeah.
like they have to read.
Yeah.
And you're pointing to it, and you can't, and then their eye lines are off because they're not looking at the teleprompter and the
Yeah.
lens.
It gets worse and worse. It's just downhill from there.
It's just downhill. And I think that's what we saw with Biden. Like they had nothing left to work with. And a guy
Hmm.
like Joe Biden should have, over the years has looked at given many speeches,
He
many
knows how to do it. He
he
definitely knows
should know
how
how
to
to
do
do
it.
it, and he
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's something that's second nature for a politician. That's a key part of the job. And yeah, they had nothing left to work with,
Hmm.
and they just had basically just given up on him.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing that you were able to kind of weave those two thoughts together in the story. Patronize Me, and I think maybe people are really responding. It seems that you're getting a good response to that.
It was really interesting. I mean, it got, those long posts don't get a lot of engagement.
Okay.
1,000 likes is a lot for a post like that.
Okay.
But what was interesting is, I think I got within 24 hours, I got like 950 likes, but I got 800 follows,
Oh shit.
which means that like 90% of the people who read it and liked it decided to follow me. So that feels good. It's a good, not that I really don't care that much about the follower count clout.
Yes.
There's so much clout chasing. There's so much clout chasing. It's just
Sure.
stupid.
But if you're
But it
doing
does
something,
feel
I
good.
I
I'd
get
be
the
lying if I
sense.
said it didn't feel good.
Yeah. All things considered, I would say that it's when if you write something and you're particularly if you're proud of it, all things considered, you'd love to have more people read it than less people, right? Fewer people read
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it is validating, and particularly when you write something and it's quite private and it's very you're open about yourself and the experiences. There's funny things that you've done. You mentioned being quite self-critical and other things like that, but kind of laying it all out in a very very honest way, in a very direct, approachable um, style of writing. Yeah, I mean, it's great to have people give you feedback and things like that. And I think that's one of the enjoyable things about the medium now is that we are open to explore different ways of getting our work out, where perhaps in the past it was a lot more difficult. Particularly, you had to go through you write something, and maybe there was a magazine, you do a submission, they don't like your shit, and it's over. You just
Oh
keep
yeah, my God. I did that for many years, actually.
you've
And
written and gotten rejections about things that you thought were great.
yeah, I thought they were great. I mean, rejected or more often or not, they just ghosted me, no
Yeah,
response.
no response at all.
There was one from Quillette that really stuck in my craw. I mean, at least she
Ouch.
took the time to respond to me.
Okay.
It was, and this was during the Me Too era. And this was before I had started this Rambo account.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, she said, no, this is a Twitter thread. Gonna pass. That was it.
Jesus
Okay.
Christ.
Thanks, bitch.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
So
I'm gonna frame this one
what makes
anytime
it
I'm feeling
pretty for him.
self-destructive. I'll read it.
Yeah, and I could probably get bigger engagement now than I would if I was actually published in Quillette. So there you go.
Sure, sure. And that's great. What's one of the things that you've put out there into the world that you were surprised by the response? You know, I'm sure like half the time that I tweet something, I'm like, this is the fucking most genius tweet in the world. Send it out, nothing, crickets. You know, and then other
Yeah.
times maybe you write something, you're like, I don't know, we'll see. And then you get a great
I was
response.
surprised by that patronized me post. I was kind of shocked at that. Um, there was another one I did, it was just kind of meditations on 9/11 and kind of where we're at in the world and some of the
Yes.
ways that I've been
War
feeling.
Stories, June
There
20th.
was another one before
Yeah,
that.
thinking about 2001. That's June
Yeah,
3rd.
that was the one. And that just it's just something I just kind of banged out one night and I had it in my drafts for a couple of months actually.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I was just kind of going through the drafts folder. I'm like, yeah, I'll just publish this. And it got pretty good engagement. So
Yeah, so I think that's the one where you self-reference you're as a middle-aged diabetic, and that's deeply, deeply, deeply honest, to share that and put it out there into the world. But I think that that's really important, and that particular piece, you're discussing how the world has changed post 9/11, and I think there are events that do change history, and 9/11 was certainly one of them. Or were there any other ones that you've experienced in your lifetime? Just
I think it was 9/11. I think it was the financial crisis,
yes,
2008, 2009. And I think it was the election of Donald Trump. I think
yes,
those three things have been, it's just changed things so much.
yeah. That and I think COVID as well, that after
Oh, and
COVID,
COVID. Thank you. Yeah. Don't let me forget that.
yeah, that there is a sense of like the hand of God came down and with a finger drew a line in the sand and said, going forward, things will be different now.
Right.
Things will be different. And that's what
Well,
you're
it's funny with COVID, I guess I'm kind of a stoic, right? That,
yeah,
um, the only thing where you really have control of is how you react, right?
sure,
To
sure, sure,
event.
sure,
And we as a society could have reacted so much better to COVID.
sure,
And we
sure.
could have reacted so much better to Donald Trump. And that's, and we could have reacted better to the financial crisis. And
Yes.
that's kind of where I saw, this hidden hand of something else that's pushing us and
Mm.
and shaping us that, Curtis Yarvin calls it the cathedral.
Yes.
Uh,
The
but
blob.
the blob. There are power structures that are shaping narratives.
Darren Beatty calls it the GAE,
Okay, I
the
love it.
global American empire, GAE.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And that's always to think about the same thing. And that if there was the red pilling happens slowly, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, and but I think about what things were like in the early 2000s and just how apolitical everybody was compared to now.
Sure. Sure.
Everything is so damn political.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get in trouble for anything, for everything. I mean, for
Yeah,
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how the politics have crept into institutions that they shouldn't be in.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I guess they were always in the schools, but now it's really in the schools or in businesses that have nothing to do with politics. Um, and I find that, in my advertising work, working in corporate America, it's just amazing how much of what they do is driven by politics. They don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah.
Um, I'm working with a car company and they're coming out with this electric SUV.
Okay.
It's going to be a very expensive car, like a $300,000 car.
Jesus
And
Christ.
I'm asking some of these guys, like, hey, who's going to buy this thing,
Like
guys?
for real, for real.
And they're like, well, it's, we have to, move toward this EV future and environment, man. And I'm like, but you guys didn't think about this logically. Like, how much money
Yeah.
are you going to lose in this thing?
Yeah. You're going to sell
They don't
zero
care.
of
They
those
care about the
vehicles, dude.
politics, they care about the prestige.
Yeah, exactly. It's virtue signaling and it's very wild. Before I joined the circus and all the rest of this shit, I was a teacher, an instructor in the university and a professor. So I wouldn't be able to do that anymore. I couldn't stand it. Even during the many years ago when I was doing that, there weren't you don't introduce yourself with your pronouns and shit like that, but it's just nonstop virtue signaling about everything. Yeah, a lot of the people who were getting tenure positions even back then were like gays and lesbians and things like that, which are minority groups and things. But now it's just it's gone utterly off the rails. And so there's a
Oh, no.
lot of kind of whole swaths of industries and things like that, Hollywood as well. My brother's a DP out in Hollywood and
Oh, is he? I had no idea.
yeah, he went to AFI and got a master's and all that shit. And now
Oh, wow. He's working? He's
he's a
doing well
DP.
with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, he does a lot of like Netflix type stuff, but he's okay. He's white and he's a dude and he's straight.
Oh,
He's got a
hard
family.
job then, man. Let me tell you.
So he's experiencing a lot of issues out there as well, and his
Yeah.
wife is a writer and they went through the writer strike and all that shit together. It's very difficult. Everything's expensive. Their kid's school's like 6,000 damn dollars a month or something crazy.
Right,
So,
right.
but I think he's doing sort of Netflix stuff, but it's got to be like there has to be one minority person. There's a checklist of shit that you have to have in it, your cast, characters, situations. Got to be a queer, and it got to queer characters, got to be a disabled characters. Better one queer and disabled character. You so check off two boxes at once or something. So there's so much of
And
that going on.
what I hear at Netflix, and I'm not, I really don't know anybody there, so I'm hearing this kind of third hand, but is that the marketing people are basically the ones picking the scripts. And
Sure.
if it doesn't check all those boxes, it will never even be considered.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, even like for example, the Game of Thrones, which is very popular, but there was a lot of blowback, like you don't have enough black characters. So the new reboot of it, whatever it's this House of Dragons thing,
Right.
lots and lots and lots of like, uh, you know, they're meeting a sort of DEI criteria, and I think the show is well done. I guess the episodes that I've managed to see or pass through the room while they're on. But yeah, there's a lot of that, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. Although lately the thing here in Paris, where the Algerian male boxer beat up the Italian female boxer, and I think people are beginning maybe to reach the limit of it.
I would say, I mean, that was such a visceral video to see her get hit.
It's
Like, who,
insane.
a dude beating a woman in front of an audience. What the fuck?
Yeah, domestic violence has become a sport at the
I mean,
Olympics.
and this is not some fucking, swimmer in a women's swimsuit. This is like he's actually hurting her. Um,
Correct. Correct. And
yeah,
getting
no,
and
I hope there's some blowback. And I do think things are changing. I'm a Jewish man and I
yeah,
have a Jewish family. And one of like the most white pilling things of the last few months has been seeing formerly very liberal family members and friends come over to, basically be getting red pilled
yes,
after the October 7th stuff.
yes.
And not the October 7th stuff, but the response to it. And that's been very interesting.
Well,
So, there's hope.
the Biden regime does not have a very good record vis-a-vis Israel whatsoever, and so I mean, I'm surprised that there aren't more uh, people in the Jewish community who are sort of like speaking out against. I think you're seeing more and more of that happening.
You're seeing a lot of it, and I have a lot of Jewish family in LA who are also UCLA alums,
Okay,
and there was occupation that protest that happened on campus where Jewish students were getting harassed, um, and
you're
yeah,
like fuck this.
they
Fuck,
just
fuck.
red pilled the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And these are people who give to the Democratic Party. These are people who are involved with liberal causes,
Yes.
and I don't know
Yes.
that they are speaking publicly against it. They don't really nobody really has a public voice, I should say, but
Mm.
they will speak in public, and I've heard this, and it's wonderful to see.
Yes.
Now, as far as like the whole like Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I think as an American, the best thing is just to stay the fuck out of it.
Yes.
Uh, but
But if you're a
it's
major donor at Columbia University, and there are
right.
many, very, very generous Jewish families who are major, major donors, and who saw what's going on over there, were like, nope, not giving to them anymore.
Exactly.
And
So
that's good. That is exactly, and that was the sense that I got too, is that Biden's like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. Fuck you guys, I'm gonna do it. You can't make me, no one's can stop me now. And then the donors were like, we can stop you. We're not contributing any more money to your campaign. It's over. And once the donations stop coming in, hey, and particularly when Silicon Valley kind of jumped in, Elon and all of his buddies, like, that's a ton of money. That is now just dried up. There's no way forward. And I think that's a really great point of attack against the institutions, against Yarvin's Cathedral, against the blob, is just to starve out the money.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you really see. I mean, if there was any question about what the motivating factor in any of this is, we know now. You know, it's all about money.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you see coming in terms of your work? What are you doing more threads? You're going to do longer pieces?
I'm gonna try to write a book. And what I've been doing, I've been, writing stuff, and I've just the last couple of weeks just been kind of posting excerpts from
Okay.
piece. And again, it's just sort of like a rambling memoir, of just kind of stories, and no particular
Essays, stories, thoughts.
And we'll see what happens. The nice thing about self-publishing, I have absolutely nothing to lose by doing it.
Sure.
And
You're on your own timeline, so you don't have someone cracking a whip at you.
Exactly. And there's no, advance that I have to try to get the next advance or whatever it is that writers do. So, and maybe I have a big enough following now that maybe some people would actually buy the book.
Sure, for sure. Absolutely, man. If the writing that you're doing now is just kind of, it's more of that same type of writing in the same genre with more stories, I think that would be super enjoyable.
And that's the amazing thing is, like, there's no gatekeepers, and there's nobody to reject my submission, to reject my manuscript.
Yeah, you put it out there, and who wants to buy it buys it, and who doesn't want to buy it doesn't buy it. I've just recently interviewed someone, and they're open about, hey, I sold the book today, and Amazon cuts them a fat check for $3.19 per book, right? So
so what if I make $50, I'll be happy, whatever.
I mean, nobody's doing it. None of us are going to get rich. I'm sure, for example, Bap has made a ton of money off his book, but then he also has his, Caribbean Rhythms broadcast, and all of those things together, the publishing. It's kind of like the whole picture. You got to bring all of these elements together.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. I would love to take, Rambo Van Halen full time, because I have a lot of fun with it. I mean, people say Twitter's a hellhole. I haven't found that. I found it's been really great for me, And I think mainly because I don't engage in arguments. If somebody's baiting me, I just fucking block them,
Block them and move on. That's not why you're there.
Yeah. And there are times where I almost fall for it, and I don't. I haven't.
Life is short. Fuck on. I'm not trying to like go down that pathway. How far along do you think you are in the book, and have you thought about what you'd like to name the book?
I'm going to call it my book.
My bookie wook, as I think
my book.
Bran once named his book My Bookie Wook. My book. That sounds a great title.
I have no idea what I'm going to call it. The Exegesis of Rambo Van Halen.
There we go.
There we go. I have no idea what I'm going to call it.
Call it Panama, hot for teacher.
There you go. Yeah, maybe let's call it Rambo Van Halen.
Rambo Van Halen. The life and times of Rambo Van Halen. Man, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, are there anybody you'd like to shout out to? Anybody out there that you like? Anybody out there?
Everybody who follows and engages. I mean, thank you for, and everyone I follow. Like, you guys are all awesome, and thanks for supporting me. I would not be doing this without you guys. So
good. Hey, man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate talking to you. It's always great to hear from writers, and I hope that that's always my hope, that anything that we talk about, or any of us talk about, could be an inspiration and help someone else who is facing some of the same things that you've faced, have stories, and what do I do with it? And you can say, well, hey man, there's a really cool guy online, Rambo Van Halen, he's posting stuff, you should read it. And then maybe that would inspire the next generation of artists to come through and do something as well.
Well, cool. Well, hey, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Rock and roll, man. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Stood and looked down. I lost a lot of friends there, baby. I got no time to mess around. So if you want it, got to bleed.